2025. It is 12:03 p.m. and we are convened at the Provo City School Board of Education, and it's a joint meeting with the Provo City Council. We are meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah, and we will begin with a roll call. Gina Hales, Provo School Board Vice President.
Becky Bogdan, City Council.
Terry McKay, Board Member.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Justin Harris, Provo City.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
Rachel Whipple, City Council.
Travis Houghton, City Council.
Thank you. We will have other people join us, and we can just introduce them as they come up. So is there a motion to start this joint meeting?
I move we start this joint meeting.
Motion made by Board Member Van Wagenen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Board Member Hall. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. We are now in our joint meeting with the City Council. We want to welcome Mayor Kalfusi, who just walked in. Thank you for being here with us. And also Isaac Katzman, who's just re-entered the room. Okay, so we are going to start off with a discussion regarding budgets, both the city budget, so on the council side, and then also with the board. And it has the council here first, so I will go ahead and turn the time over to the council. I don't know who would like to quickly talk about budget priorities and budgeting for the city.
Oh, sure. Okay, so we have been going through all of our budget meetings and discussion. We've gotten presentations from our various departments, and next week the mayor will be presenting the city's tentative budget to us. We're hoping that we'll be able to see that on Monday, maybe, or although there's a chance that the council may not see that until the actual meeting on Tuesday. Is that?
That's been the historical pattern.
We've been trying to push back against that historical pattern,
Okay.
but we've not yet been successful. They are an immovable object in that regard. So this has been a really tight budget year. We recognize that sales taxes are not as robust as they have been in past year, and there's a lot of uncertainty. We're also looking at, I don't think John has said this, but my understanding is maybe a 6% inflation. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure on the city budget. Because of that, there does not at this point seem to be council appetite for doing a truth in taxation. We haven't had an official vote on it, but so far there's kind of a distasteful feeling with that. And part of that is we are anticipating the RAP tax is up again, so we don't want to make it harder for that to pass.
For those who might be watching who might not understand what RAP tax is, would you mind?
Yeah, so that's the Recreation, Arts, and Park tax. And we've had it for 10 years, is that right?
It's a 10-year cycle. We implemented it 10 years ago for our first time ever. And so this would be our second time implementing the RAP tax.
Okay.
But having implemented it, it doesn't just stay forever. We have to actively keep it up.
A nice thing about the RAP tax, and the big paradigm, I think, message for residents, not that I'm, well, but this is just factual. It's a sales tax. And the idea, the high level concept that I have heard is it's a way to allow visitors, tourists, others, as you think of sales tax, that's capturing dollars from people coming to a football game, coming in through the airport and buying a drink or whatever. And so that's a feature of it, an element of it, is that you're bringing in dollars that way to help build your community. And so last time it had a lot of support. People saw that, oh, we can build Provo parks and things and enhance our facilities, not through property tax. So anyway, that's just.
Yeah, it's been really successful, and you may have noticed in parks throughout the city, we have signs now that say, this your RAP tax dollars at work and things like that. We also recognize that the school has, various bonding requirements to pay for Timview and things like that. that is affecting the taxes that our residents pay. So those are all considerations as we are looking at the budget.
And generally, Rachel, the RAP tax generates $3 million a year that is budgeted to the parks and arts. Is that about right? It feels about right.
It's a good little chunk.
I can find out really quick, but we
Yeah.
can keep visiting and then I'll just let you know.
Yeah. The council has its own budget priorities, as do all of the various departments. And we'll see with the proposed budget how the administration has chosen to balance both council priorities and the needs of their departments. That's the hardest thing, right? Each department has needs, what they would like to do, what they haven't yet been able to do, what, aspirational things. And the administration has the very hard job of balancing those needs between different departments when they present a budget to us. They have been very consistent in presenting us a balanced budget that doesn't ask for increased taxes in order to accomplish it. And sometimes that's done through hard decisions and efficiencies. Is that a fair way to put it?
We love the word efficiency, so thank you for using it.
Yes, okay. So that's where we're at. The library is also holding steady. Last year we did a small increase in the property tax for the library's portion, and they are very grateful for that. That's helped them so they didn't have to make additional cuts. And so they're not asking for another increase this year. They're going to keep working with what they have. So that is, like, if this were next week, we could tell you much more about what the budget is looking like. But at this point, that's where we stand.
Remind me when you actually adopt the budget? Like, when do you guys actually vote on it and actually do all of that?
So it depends on whether or not we choose to do truth in taxation.
Okay.
So if we do not do truth in taxation, we can get it adopted much more quickly. If we do truth in taxation, then it's not until August because we'll have had all those times for the hearings and everything to consider it. Do you want more specific
Nope,
dates? If
that was
there
great.
are more specifics, that would be a Justin question, not a Rachel question.
No, I think that's great. Just a general idea to give us here, but also people who may be watching an idea of if they have some feedback, right? If they want to take a look at it, give you feedback what the timeline is. So I think that's great. We're looking at June.
Yes, and once the administration has that tentative budget done, we have the obligation to adopt the tentative budget. That doesn't mean that we are approving it. It means that this is the document that we are going to all be working from as we examine it and look to see if any adjustments are appropriate to be made. And our residents will also have access to that document so that they can give us feedback on it. Because those comprehensive budgets are a fairly delicate balance, it can be difficult to make adjustments, but it is still possible. And as a council, we have that responsibility to look at it carefully and to make those financial decisions. Often in the past, we have accepted the mayor's budget without too many changes. But we will see what happens this year. Having not seen it, I don't know what they're giving us.
Okay.
We know it will be balanced.
It will be balanced.
Yeah.
And
They
it's
told us
$2
that
million,
much.
the RAP tax.
$2 million.
is
$2 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Also, Gary Garrett has joined us, the president of the city council.
Sure.
All right, any questions or comments about, or is that what it, chair?
Chair.
The chair. We have president, vice president. You guys have chair and co-chair, chair and vice
Vice
chair,
chair.
vice chair.
Yeah,
So.
because we like to sit down.
I love it. We'll just call you Vice President Chair. Vice President Chair Garrett is here. Any questions or anything else that we need to talk about with the city budget? Anything else anybody wants to add to that? So if you guys aren't doing truth and taxation, aren't planning on it this year, is it like, are you guys looking at doing them more regularly and perhaps doing it next year and then doing it more regular basis?
So for 2 years, we did very modest increases on truth and taxation, not even quite enough to keep up with inflation. And the council at the time had the intention to continue to do that regularly. We did not do it last year in part because we were doing the library. And so instead of doing the increase for the very small portion of our citizens' taxes, which is the operational part of the city budget, we did the little increase for the library, which was, you know, fairly similar to the increases that we've done the previous 2 years. If we were to do it this year, and like I say, I don't know that there's council support for it, it would likely be that same very small, like 2 to 3% increase. I don't know that there is support this year right now because of the other factors I mentioned before, but the conversation will be had again next year if we want to go back to that increase. There's some thought that, you know, just doing that regularly just becomes kind of baked into the process, and then it's not an onerous burden on our residents. We don't want to get into the situation like the county where there had to be a big jump, which is much harder to be absorbed into your regular household budget than like a $10 increase per year. If you jump up $60, then that hurts more. So that is the thought. And like I say, we haven't had full discussions or a vote on that for this year.
Right.
So I can't say any more than that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I will be taking the discussion for the board's budget priorities. We've started those discussions over the last month or so. And I need help with numbers. So I used a lot of Wendy's slides and studied these a lot. But we just wanted to give you an idea of what our budget priorities are, and I thought with some of the things that we're going to be talking about, it might be easier to have some visuals regarding what our budget priorities are and maybe why they are our priorities. So I put this together, and so really, if we go to the next slide, the TLDR, which for those of you around my age, is internet slang for a concise version of a lengthy article.
Too long.
Is that too long, didn't read. Is salary increases. And so, I mean, on the one hand, it seems, you know, kind of, yeah, well, of course, and on the other hand, there are a lot of other needs that the district has. So I just wanted to give just a little bit of information to help you understand why perhaps we're putting so much emphasis on salaries. So teacher salaries, a comparison. If you take a look at this is our first year teachers. That is us in the, I don't know if that's dark brown or black, the one right there. You'll see that we are, you know, toward the low end, right, of compensation. It has. We have made a very concerted effort to do that, to bring that up.
It was like 48K just a few years ago.
I can't remember the exact number, but we were all the way at the bottom. And then you'll see on the left, you'll have, so we have some different factors that come into play, right? We have our surrounding districts. We have Nebo to the south, Alpine to the north, which is breaking up into different districts, but still, they're still together right now. Those are the two that really, the people who work for those typically live close to us, so we're competing, quote unquote, competing with them for teachers, right? So you'll see we're about 2,000-ish, 2,500 from them. Nebo is higher than both of us. We put Salt Lake on there as a comparison as well, and Jordan is just right past the port of the mountain. But Ogden is a single city district like we are. There aren't too many of us, and so that often is a better comparison when you're looking at budgets and the way that numbers come together. So that's why you'll see Ogden on there. Sometimes you'll see Murray, but Ogden is the one that we have.
And does this program fit into the large or very large districts?
And to the large.
Large. We're medium-ish. We're not. So you have.
We're actually labeled as a large.
But we're large.
So green.
Yeah. So we're green.
Okay.
We are green. Yes. Good question. Okay, so if you go to the next one of the things that we want to look at, though, is we do want new teachers. Obviously, we want new teachers, but a lot of it's common sense, right? That the longer you have teachers, the longer they're in the profession, the more effective they can be. So if you take a look at this is where we were. This was
at this time last year
Okay,
before
so
we put in place the longevity bonus.
At this time last year, this is what it looked like. And as you can see, we were at the very bottom of all of these. And it really was causing issues because we had teachers who experienced teachers who wanted to stay with us, but in order to provide for their families and all of those things, they would then often leave and go to other districts. Wendy, jump in, or anybody jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. And so last year, our business administrator and the board and the superintendent, as well as other people, came together with an idea, which was if we could compensate people based on their longevity, right? How long they've stayed in the district and reward people for staying with us longer, then perhaps we would be able to keep some of these employees longer. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see we did it.
And the others are just based on overall, they've been teaching for a certain number of years. It's not, they've been in Alpine for a certain number of years.
I'm not sure. Do we know if they do longevity? I'm not
They
positive.
don't
Within
do
the district.
longevity,
No,
but
it's
it,
just-
go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
They don't do necessarily longevity, it's just based on years in education is what we
Okay.
base our salary schedules on, so.
But we are basing ours
Yours doing a longevity.
We are doing
for our
longevity.
longevity specifically for Provo. And as you can see, we jumped from the smallest, I mean like the lowest to fourth down, right? And so we funded that, we made that a funding priority, a budget priority last time, and we are, as a board, committed to continuing to do that, but it's a yearly thing, right? We have to make sure that we have the money to continue this. But you can see that that was an investment, but that it has paid off.
What's the feedback then?
They
What
love
else
it.
have we
They
done?
love it. That was probably in the first couple of months of school, like, it made all the difference for a lot of
So you see a
teachers. We just-
tangible difference on
Yeah,
it?
Yeah.
no question.
I will have teachers come up to me, and I don't know them, but they will come up to me and thank me for
Yep.
it.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think I've received.
Yeah, 'cause they don't want to leave Provo. They have no
There's
intent to leave Provo.
Right, they like it here, but they have to have other things that they need to think about.
And
So-
by doing it longevity, we're not poaching from the other districts?
No, this is all people
We have
who
to
are
think.
here, right?
It was like five, we targeted 5 to 20 years.
5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And I can't, remind me of the increments, Steve, when they were here 5 years, they got a jump of, was it 3 increments?
Yeah.
And then if they were here, I think it was 5 and 10 was 3 increments, and then 15 and 20 was 4, anyway.
This
We
is
had
Steve.
different, Steve Reese is part of our business and accounting department.
Devin, I forgot to say at the beginning, Jennifer Partridge and Devin Daly, the board president and our business administrator are traveling, and they are unable to be here, so Steve is our substitute. Devin and I am a not very good substitute for Jennifer. So, thank you, Steve. Yeah.
And something that I appreciate about this was that it was like a one-time bigger expense than the ongoing expense, right? Because we had to catch kind of everybody up to get it started. And so hopefully we can find ways to continue funding this because it has made such a difference.
Okay.
Provo's a little expensive in terms relative to some of our neighbors in terms of housing and where to live, and teachers I mean, it's nice if you're going to stay in the profession to teach where your family's going to go to school, etc. And so we just sort of tried to incentivize our people to stay.
And it makes a big difference to kids, right? The research shows that the experienced teachers are one of the biggest factors in student achievement. And so that's where we need to be focusing our money. So you can kind of see as why I included this in our budget priorities. This is why it's so important. So we sent out a survey to our employees to see, okay, we have the budget coming up. Give us some feedback. What are your priorities? Anybody want to guess before we show you the next slide what the priority was?
Smaller classrooms?
Okay, let's see. Let's look at the next one. So I kind of condensed all of this into one. We have certified employees and we have classified employees, right? So certified are our teachers, social workers, counselors, administrators. Usually these are the people who are licensed. There was a 50% response rate for those of you data nerds. I included that because I am one of those, so that you can kind of see what the response rate is. Classified are our aides, assistants, facilities operations, and support staff, which had a lower response rate. But if you look, both of them, 71% of both groups listed salary as their top priority. The second priority for both groups at different percentages was insurance and benefits. Okay. So other priorities that they mentioned was paid time off and leave policies. And this is in order of importance for them. I didn't put the numbers in there, but paid time off and leave policies, class size reduction, which is what Rachel said, instructional aids, and support for student behavior. And then for our classified, it was workload and then relationships with supervisors. Those were their budget priorities. So as you can see, what I gathered from this is that they're worried about quality of life, right, and providing for their families and having good medical care and things like that.
How does relationships
go
with
ahead.
supervisors translate to a budget?
I can't remember. What was that question that came up?
We weren't asking them about budget specifically. We're asking them about their priorities because as we meet and confer with them, we're looking at working conditions as well as budget and salaries and insurance and all of those
Gina
pieces.
just said
so.
budget, so I was curious.
Yeah.
I told you that I'm a poor substitute for Jennifer. So.
Doing great.
All right. So what have we done in the past to mitigate these salary differences? Because these salary differences are historic. right, historical. They go back quite a ways. So what are some things that we have done? We've done truth in taxation, which we kind of talked about with the city, which is a raise to property taxes. And then last year, like we talked about, in 2024 to 25, which is this school year, we did the longevity bonuses, which, as Lisa was talking about, was a bigger lift up front so that we could get everybody where they needed to be, but then we have to continue to fund them once we have them where they need to be. And this is connected to our goals in the strategic plan, which I think we talked to you guys about previously. So that's really the two biggest things that we have done to mitigate these salary differences. So here's our current financial situation. We get a 4% increase in weighted pupil unit, the WPU. I don't know if you guys know what that is. I am not going to try and explain it to you right now, but basically it's the money that we get from the state per pupil, right, per student. And that's how much we get. And one thing that we wanted to make sure to point out was we get feedback regularly that the WPU should account for teacher raises and to do all this other thing, but really all it does is barely maintains the current salary structure.
What you have to realize is every teacher goes up because they're here for one more year and then they're gaining in education. So just to maintain that eats up most of our WPU. It is not equated to like a 4% increase in the WPU means a 4% raise. It literally 4% will barely fund to keep teachers at the current rate that they're at. If we wanted to have that increase, we need more money in the WPU.
Also, like sometimes in the legislative session, things will happen like early literacy, our K-3 literacy program, the funding will shift in a way where they'll move that into where we're now going to cover that. We've set it up and it's a program, and now it's not covered separately or funded in any unique way. It now comes out of that WPU. So that it actually eats away at that before we even maintain teacher salaries, because if programs funding shifts over there, then that money actually isn't what it looks like.
Was there any special allocation this year, in this year's session, for education? I'm trying to remember.
Yes. Steve might be able to help me. So yeah, so there is a salary increase, and we'll talk about that in just a minute because it's not really a salary increase. We'll talk about how that ended up working, but they did do some one-time funding for Catalyst centers to help with career and technical education. What they also don't realize is they also reduced the amount of money that each district gets in career and technical education. So they're just taking that money and shifting it to a specific priority, right? There was a slight increase also in at-risk funding, so students that are identified with specific risk factors, that dollar amount, I believe, increased just a little bit. It wasn't a significant amount.
They gave a tiny bit of money for the school safety requirements that they passed the year before.
That's correct.
But it's not enough.
There's a little bit of school fee money because they were looking
Oh, that's right. Thank you, Steve.
School fees.
That's right. Thank you.
So just over $150 million of our current $162 million budget goes for salaries to maintain, just to maintain the salaries. So you can see that's a pretty big piece of the pie. Each 1% raise for all of our employees. So if we did a 1% raise across the board, it would be so for each 1%, it's $800,000. And we have found that information is helpful as we speak with the public to help them understand, like, why don't you just give them raises? We would love to. Here's the reality, and let's talk about how we can get it done. But I think it's helpful for people to kind of visualize that. We've also had an insurance cost increase of 32%. Have you guys seen that?
We are.
Okay. It's a big, I mean, I've seen it been going up other years as well, but they're continuing to be big increases. And then substitute teachers, the expense has been additional $1 million.
And that's because we went over to a PTO structure where teachers don't actually have to pay for the sub anymore. So that was the competitive thing with all of the other districts. When they were taking paid time off or personal leave, then they would pay for the sub. We no longer require that. Everyone's using those days left and right, so it's increased our overall substitute costs. Jason, do you have anything to add about that, about PTO and substitutes?
No, I think you mentioned the key part of other school districts locally don't have a cost for that day. They don't require the teachers to pay for the sub that day. And so that was one of the drivers behind the move that we've made. And I think it's an ongoing conversation with our teachers just to try to say, how do we keep the the right people in the classroom during the school year, and yet have you feel like you have the leaders you need for family events and different things that need to happen.
Thank you. That's Jason. He's our HR director and deputy superintendent. I'm gonna start calling you that, just deputy superintendent. Okay. Next slide. So problem solving. How can we meet our needs, right? So we estimated that we will need $6 million additionally to do the following: to close the gap, to further close that gap between our district and our two most competitive districts for that first year teacher salaries, that first slide. To continue to fund the longevity bonus that we talked about and to keep our experienced teachers in the district. To close the gap in pay of our administrators. So I think one thing that sometimes gets overlooked is the fact that in order to have well-functioning schools, individual schools, and in order for our teachers need to be compensated correctly, right? But they also need a competent and very good administrator to help them do the things that they need to do to be competent and to be really good teachers. And then above the school level administrators, we have the district administrators who are supporting those. So one thing that I think Wendy has done very well here, Superintendent Dow has done, is we have our district administrators are in our schools a lot, and they're in there and they're supporting our schools. So we need to pay them well too, because we have lost administrators because we don't pay as much as surrounding districts. Same thing as teachers. So we're $6,000 to $10,000 behind other districts for principals and assistant principals. So we need to start to close that gap as well.
And
so,
just to make a point about that, when the state gave raises to the teachers, they don't do raises for administration.
So that's really left
Only
up to the
goes
districts
it
to
only
figure
goes
that
to
out.
teachers. So.
And it's, I think it's, yeah. And then the $6 million would also, that last point there, provide at least a 2% raise for our classified employees, because I think they're not, so those are the people that we talked about, the teacher aides, the assistants, the people who take care of our buildings, right? They will also leave if other people are paying more for them, right? And we need to take care of them as well. So we need to adjust their salary schedule as well. Okay, Bonnie? Thank you.
Can I just interject something though? This is prior to the Utah Fits All Scholarship being ruled unconstitutional. So if that actually is upheld in that particular appeal, the way that bill was written is that it will automatically pull, I believe it's $6,000 from that teacher educator salary. So for us to make up that $6,000, not only would we have to raise property taxes, but it will also mean that teachers will receive no salary increase. It will just prevent them from having a pay cut. So, so that's the situation that we're in right now, as we're waiting for that court ruling to go through. So we could be in a very precarious situation as a result of that.
Thank you. Okay.
They said up to 3 months.
So where do we get the money? About $4 million can come from interest and increased property tax revenue from recently annexed property from the Alpine District that's within the Provo City boundaries. And we've talked about this in previous joint meetings, right? And so we just want to, I forgot to pull out my notes. We wanted to update you on that. We have gone through the process, and Devin, who is not here, wanted me to be sure to thank the city employees who have helped her with this. It's a ton. It's super helpful. But we are, I think where we are in the process is we have annexed the property from Alpine. There are a couple more last steps. So the last step is to get the last survey map to turn into the county. After the county, it will go to the lieutenant governor. And then we're crossing our fingers and think we can get that done this tax year, because there's quite a bit of money there that we can use to help with that. There are some parcels, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. I think annexation is on there somewhere. But we do need to do that with Nebo as well. We haven't started that process yet. But if we can do that. Anyway, so that's part of that money can come from the annexation. Yes?
Can I ask a question? And Steve, you might be able to help. My understanding is, though, that's not like a windfall of additional money coming in, because we have to collect a flat amount of money, basically, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So then that gets spread out, and other people's taxes will be adjusted because that goes into the pot of revenue,
yeah,
right?
So with truth of taxation, it goes into the base, which would lower everybody's rate. So to capture that, it requires raising the rate.
Right. So just because sometimes everyone thinks, well, that's just now an additional amount of whatever you're doing, and it doesn't actually work like that.
So the recently annexed properties aren't treated as newly developed properties?
No, they should be, that
Yeah.
should be, right?
They are.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
It
where that
goes
growth,
into
It
that base.
just the bigger base is bigger now.
Yeah.
yes.
But our amount is a set amount, so it just lowers other people's
But it
rates.
does mean that any kind of property tax raise doesn't bring us in more than what otherwise, right?
And we can get into that a little bit more
Yeah,
when we
sorry.
have it down the agenda.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to clarify more because I'm curious.
So let's talk about that. We have the annexation on here. I'm the one who jumped the gun on that because I
Okay.
forgot that we had an actual agenda item on that. So we can pull some money from there. We can pull some resources from our fund balance, but this is not a long-term solution. We don't have the fund balance to continue to do these things perpetually. And then we need to find an additional $1 to $2 million to get that money that we need. So where do we find the money? So we are looking at our budget, which is what people have asked us as I've been on the board. Very consistently, we need to look at our budget and cut things, right? And so we're looking at our budget and seeing what's the necessity, what's the effectiveness, and what are the benefits of our current programs. So these are the programs that we're looking at. And I think sometimes people don't understand that these programs cost money to run, right? We're not saying, I want to be very clear with the public and with the city council, we're not saying we're going to cut these programs. We're just looking at them, right? We're looking at them to see if can we make them more effective? Do we need them? All of those things. So none of these programs are on the chopping block, but we do need to take a look at them. And these are the programs we're looking at. Dual language immersion programs. School nurses and health clerks, fully certified music teachers at the elementary level, restructuring our online education program because we're spending almost $1 million with kids going elsewhere to do their online schooling. We have preschool. We have 3 preschools, is that right? 4 preschools? And so do we need to consolidate all of those? Our preschools are in our lower income areas, so it's more accessible, but do we need to consolidate? And then we have Camp Big Springs, which is a Provo tradition, and whenever we talk about Camp Big Springs, we get lots and lots of feedback. But those are the programs that we're looking at, right? And then we can we cut substitute expenses by offering incentives for teachers who use fewer PTO days, increasing employee contributions to the insurance, which is not popular amongst our employees, and then increasing property taxes through the truth in taxation process. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. Oh, so here's a little more information about these specialty programs, just so that you and the public have an idea of how much they cost. So our DLI programs, which are very popular, and we receive good feedback about, it's $1.2 million at the elementary level alone.
Are there 2 Chinese and French, or am I missing any?
We have 5 programs in 4 languages.
Yes.
2 Spanish, 1 French, 1 Portuguese, and 1 Chinese.
But technically 2 Spanish.
And for a district our size, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So.
We do have social workers in every school, and that's $2 million. That is also something that we get a lot of feedback on, to please don't cut that, from teachers, administrators, and parents. Fully certified music teachers, so instead of having part-time music teachers or people who aren't certified, which would be a lower cost, we have fully certified music teachers at just over $1 million per year.
At the elementary level. They're
Sorry,
automatically certified at the secondary level, but yep.
Nurses, having nurses in our schools, we have a contract with the county, $1.1 million, and we also have health clerks who kind of supplements, or I don't know what supplements are, I think, but they're there at the schools. About $500,000.
I mean, I don't think, we're just looking at how we
Right.
are,
How we can fund
how
it
we're funding
differently.
it, right?
Did I
Because
say we were
you
gonna
have to
cut
have
it?
nurses in your school system.
Oh,
for your-
okay. This is, yeah, so we wouldn't cut the nurses, we would look at how
I
can
just don't
we
think it's a
decrease the
specialty
cost, right? Can we look at a different way to have nurses in the school that cost less money?
I think the issue with nurses is that we pay quite a bit of money through Utah County Board of Health with that contract. Most districts do not use county boards of health for their contracts. They just establish their own nursing programs, and so that's how they have some cost savings, because there is overhead that we're paying that's quite extensive as a result to Utah County Health.
Do you contract with the hospital or with schools, medical schools? Is that an option?
It could be, yes.
So we have preschools that we kind of talked about before, and then we have Camp Big Springs. So those are the costs for all those specialty programs that we are looking at. And again, just to reiterate, we are not looking at cutting all of these. We're just looking at how we can be more efficient and what we need to be doing with these things to find that money that we need. So we for our boundary and feasibility study that we recently completed, we asked for feedback from our community. And here's some of the feedback that has to do with the things that we've talked about. DLN and the arts are specifically mentioned as important programs to our community. They really like these programs. You can see that they cost money, but they're also very valued by the community. Our career and technical education and our STEM are also very valued. They're well developed at the high school level, but we need to do some other things in some other places. So, go ahead. Other community information, 55% of our respondents mentioned that they're willing to pay higher property taxes to keep these programs in place. There was a lot of concern expressed about class sizes, and so we have to figure out how to do that, but also how do we budget for all the other things that are needed. There's a note that at some schools we don't have the space for additional teachers or classrooms. There are quite a few schools actually that don't have. Like even if we were able to get an additional teacher to bring down class sizes, there's no space in the school for those additional teachers.
I think it was also important when we met with the Community Connections Committee, they felt that that number actually would be higher to pay more in property taxes. They just wanted to know what the amount was. Like, there's a difference between I'm going to pay $15 more a year versus you're going to raise my property taxes $200 a year. There was a 29% of our respondents were unsure, and that's because we didn't give an amount with that. So,
okay. I can't, oh yeah, there we go. That's the end. What did I miss? What questions do you have that I can't answer but Wendy can? And Steve.
Are you concerned about continuing access to Title I funds?
That is a good question.
Not at this point. That isn't the indication we've gotten from the governor. As a matter of fact, when we met with the governor's education advisor, he felt like it might end up with more money coming to the states simply because there's less bureaucratic oversight that's happening through the Department of Education. But there also might be fewer restrictions tied to that money, so it might open up the state to actually allocate that money in maybe some different ways, and that does create some concern about where those funds would actually land then.
Are there other grants or things that we're looking at as well?
Well, for like low-income students, it comes from the federal government. So I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 9 million or 8 million of our budget that comes from federal money through IDEA, which is special education, Title I, Title III, which is for multilingual learners, immigrants. So.
Yeah, and plus a little bit of Medicaid.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Like $1 million.
Yeah, thank you. So.
Okay. Anything else? Superintendent Dow's presentation was awesome. I wish I could take credit for that. Just read what she put together. Okay, before we move on to the next item, I just want to say how much I appreciate this opportunity that we have to meet together as a city council and a school board, because I think we're serving the same people, right? Our overlap is pretty much exactly the same. And the fact that we can meet together and talk about our budget priorities and work together, I think is a big deal. And so I appreciate you guys being here and having these conversations with us. All right. So the next item up on the agenda, and we're actually 5 minutes ahead, Jennifer would be so proud of me. The discussion regarding HTRZ process and planning and zoning updates, and Justin Harrison, I believe, is going to do that presentation.
All right. I'm going to sit so I don't cover the screen, but stop me at any time if you have any questions. I know at the last joint meeting there was very brief mention and discussion of some of these economic development, redevelopment tools, and HTRZs were brought up. Since that time, we've had a developer come forward, and they're moving forward in the process of submitting an application for an HTRZ. The City Council has had a number of presentations, and as those have come in, I've tried to coordinate with Devin and send her that information to try to disperse at least the knowledge we have with the school board so you know it's coming. So hopefully that has been helpful, but wanted to give a general overview. I'm sure there will be lots of questions and discussions afterwards, so I'll try to be brief. But just generally, what's an HTRZ? HTRZ stands for Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone. This is an economic development tool that the state had put together and passed in 2021. There's been subsequent changes, and we'll go over that a little bit later. But it's very similar to a redevelopment tool, or what you think of in a traditional RDA, in that the funding comes through tax increment. And there are some specifics that we'll go through and kind of compare RDA areas to HDRZ areas. So it enables local taxing entities to share property tax revenue that increment around specifically transit stations. And those are typically within a quarter to a half mile, depending on the type of transit station. And you'll see from this map here, sorry, I'm flipping on my computer thinking I'm changing the slides, but as you can see the map here, the state differentiates these types of transit stations based off of bus rapid transit, light rail, and commuter rail. And so there are differing radiuses that are applicable. You'll see the larger radius is a half mile from the Front Runner station. It's also Provo Central. So you've got a larger radius for commuter rail, as well as it falls within an opportunity zone, and so that also increases the area. So that's a half mile radius. But you can see the different possible areas. There's not proposals in all of these areas, but these are all of the areas that would potentially qualify. So what are some of the key requirements or things that have to be a part of an HDRZ zone in order for an application even to be really reviewed by the committee that approves these? So there must be greater than or equal to 12% of the developable area has to include affordable housing.
Listen, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
What is affordable housing, and who determines what is affordable?
So they define it in here, and it's
Okay.
based off of county AMI.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. 51% of the zone has to be used for residential purposes, and so the density requirements are at least 50 units to the acre if it falls within, if you're using a rail radius, so a front runner station. It has to be at least 39 units if you're using a BRT station as your zone. There's got to be mixed use development, and then the size depends again based off of the type of station. So can be up to 125 non-contiguous acres for a rail station, 100 for BRT.
Do you know just in terms of the minimum size?
No minimum size.
Okay.
This is a lot of information, and I will send this over after. I cheated. This is from the state because they put this together much better than I would. But just outline some of those requirements based off of the different types of stations, so BRT, light rail, or commuter rail. I won't go through all of this. I've got some highlights in here, but you can see the different requirements based off of the type of station. So what does the creation process look like? This is something that a developer would go to the city with, and that's kind of the step that we're at now. We've got a potential proposal. Once the developer proposes that, the city, in conjunction with the developer, would put forward an application to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. They perform a gap analysis via a third party. They held a public meeting regarding the HDRZ, and committee members would vote on that proposal, and then the zone would be recorded and governed by the city's either redevelopment or community reinvestment agency.
Justin, would a public meeting be considered a neighborhood meeting?
No, so they would actually hold a noticed public meeting. So they're an actual governing body, and actually this next slide I'll get into. I'm sure the question is who's on that committee, and it depends based off of where the application's coming from. So there are some designees that are on all of the committees, and then they bring in representatives of those taxing entities where the application's emanating from. So you've got someone from GOEO, each of the municipalities that is party to the HDRZ, so all of the taxing entities, Department of Transportation, UTA, the MPO, so in our case, MAG, the school district within that area, or school districts. Thankfully, we don't have that problem. And then the largest taxing entity after the municipality. There's also members that are appointed by the President of the Senate, Speaker of the House, the Chair of the State Board of Education, and the CEO of each county. So large committee.
And can I just ask a clarifying question then? So before the public meeting, that committee is convened so that they're all present at that first public meeting?
Correct. So just a few more of the approval processes and statutory requirements. So tax increment is captured within that area, and participation from taxing entities is required. That's, I think, the part that we talked briefly about at the last meeting. So that's a thing. Let's throw it out there. No one has choice in there.
Yeah.
So funds are administered by the municipalities, either RDA or CDA, and up to 80% of that increment. So none of the old or current property taxes is taken, but up to 80% of that increment would go towards that project. It's got a maximum of 25 consecutive years. And then also 15% of the incremental state sales tax portion would go to the state TTIF, and so that goes to Transportation Investment Fund. So again, trying to reinvest in those transit-oriented developments around where HTRZs are. This is a little easier to read, but really great breakdown of differences between CRA or RDA areas and the HTRZ. So, you know, your geographic limitations, you've got, in the case of a CRA or RDA, it can be created wherever the board wants to create that within the bounds of that municipality. HTRZs, you've got to be within that radius of the different either front runner or BRT stations. Taxing participation is required in the HTRZ, not necessarily required in the CRA. That's where I'm sure you're familiar with folks coming to you begging and pleading to be part of their TIF. Again, state participation, the state participates in that sales tax TIF portion. They don't participate in the CRA. The governing bodies are the same. Committee formation, we went through kind of that process. There's not a committee from the CRA other than the taxing entities that approve those interlocal agreements. All funds, just like an RDA, have to be expended within that area. That's the whole purpose of creating those. I'm trying to think what else quickly would be helpful and relevant. The zoning requirements, so HTRZ, you've got requirements for how many units per acre, to a lesser extent types of units, and we'll get into that in a minute, or actually it's on the previous chart. So there's a requirement for a certain portion of affordable housing, so 9% has to be at 80% and 3% has to be at 60% or lower. So there is that portion where in the CRA, you know, the developer can either create that as part of their project. There's not such strict or specific limitations, or they can pay into a fund for affordable housing, but there's not an option like that for the HTRZ. And these can also be used with other tools. So hopefully no one has questions about that, because I have the same questions about overlapping areas. So eligible fund uses. Funds can be used for affordable housing construction. The biggest thing is infrastructure, and that's typically where developers come in and ask for this. They're typically creating large projects and need significant infrastructure investment. Can also go towards public space and amenities, utility and roadway upgrades, again, infrastructure, or structured parking and transit-oriented development enhancements. Couple quick legislative updates, as always. The legislature tinkers with new tools each session, and so they made a couple of changes this last legislative session. and tied that affordability to the county median income because it was ambiguous previously. 25% of the units also have to have more than one bedroom. I think we saw, or at least the state saw, there are currently 7 projects throughout the state that have gone through this HDRZ process. I think they saw a lot of studio options. So it also clarified the radius measurement. There was some ambiguity there. And also, so how the tax increment can be triggered. Because the areas can be non-contiguous, you might have different projects that trigger different times. And then updating the base year based off of overlapping zones. Again, this is another place where I have lots of questions for the state, but we haven't seen any of those yet. So just real quickly, kind of local opportunities. There's obviously Front Runner, Center Street Station, and lots of BRT stops within the city where there are potential for these. Not to say that there will be. HDRZs are there to help fund this transit-oriented development around housing and infrastructure, and they give an opportunity to partner with developers and transit agencies. So these are ways for MPOs like MAG, for ETA to see the investment of local communities into transit and how they're building that into their city planning. I promised this last slide. So HDRZs, now the state has framed this as a strategic tool for housing and transit development. It does require a lot of coordination between a lot of different entities. And as I mentioned, there have only been 7 of these that have been approved in the state, so there have not been many, but it appears that they've been successful as they're moving forward. We've tried to reach out to some cities that have worked with developers to get these approved. And then I wanted to touch real quickly, so next steps, identifying stakeholders and proposals. We do have a developer who has come forward and is interested in doing such a project around Provo Town Center Mall. It's actually the owners of the mall and development partners. And so as far as their conceptual timeline, they're hoping by the end of the month to submit, at least have some kind of draft application along with their proposed zone changes into our development services department to start really moving in earnest with the process. And from there, I think then they'll be ready to show publicly what this potential project will look like. So.
No one's applied to build on the empty lot south of the Front Runner station? Dang, that's like a prime place.
It's a great spot.
Just a big empty lot.
It's a great spot. But hopefully that was helpful. Any questions? I'm sure there's lots of discussion. But.
It's just like a little field kind of thing.
It's just big and empty.
Square, nothing.
Abandoned. There is an abandoned home, but yeah.
I guess one question I have is just, so it isn't until after the state has approved an application that committee is then formed, right?
No, so the committee approves the application.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep.
Just
Yep. Yeah, so
the school district has a vote?
They do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my understanding is once that application is submitted, they will then form that committee, reach out to the different taxing entities, schedule everything.
I believe around this, the city did hold a meeting for communities in these zones to come and like look at the mapping, and they described all this, right? Of some of these HDRZ zones and put some feedback about possible, I guess about things they would maybe like to see or potential projects. Not that those would happen, but just like, we like some green space here. And I went to one of those, and
Yeah.
I know it was in relation to this, but.
So that was,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
our stationary plan, so a different requirement of the
different.
state.
And they're
Okay.
required, they're due the first week of October, I
That was
believe.
what that was, okay.
Yeah.
So it was specifically around each of the trends.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those station area plans are useful for people who are looking at wanting to do an HTRZ zone.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's a similar overlap, and it can give them guidance as they're thinking about their projects.
Right, okay.
So they're kind of like parallel things.
That's what I was wondering, like how they matched up. Thank you.
Yep.
So my question is if something gets approved, is there a timeline of when they have to start the project? Because I know we've had some RDAs that have been approved that never got off the ground, and that's something that concerns me. Like making sure that they actually get going.
Yes, so there is, I'm trying to remember, I want to say, it is, so it changes depending on the type of station. So if it is commuter rail, it's within they have up to 25 years to collect the increment over a 45-year period.
Wow.
What?
They could trigger that
So they could wait
RDA
20
for
years.
They could wait
Potentially.
20 years? Wow.
Potentially. And it gets, it's smaller as you've got smaller radiuses for smaller stations. So around BRT, it's only 60%, and they have 15 years to collect over a 30-year period. Same with light rail, but they're up to 80%. But
That doesn't
we
really
don't have
give
light rail.
incentive to get the projects
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. Yeah, the one part of that could be is as the city works with a developer to put together that application, a development agreement would probably be a good thing to develop with that application, and within that development agreement there could be parameters around
When it has to be turned into
start.
the project.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Appreciate that,
Yep.
Justin. Okay, next up on the agenda is a discussion regarding safe routes to school, Franklin Elementary concerns. I'm gonna have to turn that over to Wendy because I don't.
That's fine. I'm not even sure what it is, but Jared isn't able to be here because he's with BYU today and tomorrow. But he just wanted us to first off thank Vern for all of his help. And we appreciate you being here. We've kind of formalized our process to a much better degree for safe routes. It kind of felt a little bit willy-nilly before, and it felt sort of like, well, if somebody asks, then maybe we'll fund this, and so on and so forth. So our school community councils obviously have always looked at safe routes to school for elementary through middle school, and then those school community councils, as they identify areas that they feel might be unsafe or hazardous, will submit those. Now they submit them to our district's traffic safety committee, and Vern sits on that with us and reviews all of those, and then that way if they're asking for a crosswalk or things like that, then we can kind of know what the city's planning. And then that committee will then make a recommendation to the Board of Education, for example, if we're looking for additional bus routes to provide safe transportation, and in addition to crosswalks, and there's just a much better coordination with the city that's been taking place as a result. So most recently, our two schools that have really requested some considerations would be Wasatch Elementary, because there's so many areas that don't have sidewalks up there, and then we have a few for Franklin Elementary where students are crossing 5th West, and where the crosswalk is right by, is it the Best Motel, I think it is? Yeah, and so there are parents that just do not want their students, one, crossing a really busy road right there, but it's also that location is concerning to them. And then we do have students that are crossing over the railroad tracks, and so those have been some things that we're considering, and so then our transportation director takes that, kind of looks at what our drivers and availability are, and I think the only one that that committee is actually recommending is one that's coming across 5th West for Franklin Elementary, just based on what we can do.
And because the bridge is going to be under construction.
That's right. Thank
for
you.
the next 2 years.
That's right.
So
I'm glad you
the
brought that up.
more traffic is gonna be going down Freedom and Fifth West.
That's correct.
And make it more dangerous.
That's right.
Like it did last time when there was 500 West was under construction.
So I do have a concern about that because my kids are constantly bused through Franklin. If they get caught on that train, especially if you get a new bus driver that doesn't realize you need to look, and if it's blocked, you need to go to university. They can wait on that bus for a really, really, really long time. And once that bus gets stopped, they cannot turn around.
Right.
And so they're stuck. So if
we're not funding that route for Franklin.
It's
That was
across
not the,
500
yeah,
West.
that was not the,
No,
that was
no,
a
no,
request,
no,
but.
no, no, you're always funding the route to my house
Okay.
from Franklin, always, because
Okay.
I'm more than a mile and a half
Okay,
away
okay.
from your school. You're always doing that. So my concern is I think that there needs to be some planning from transportation of what happens if that gets blocked. Because normally if you get a more experienced driver, they'll look before they cross, before they turn down Fifth,
Mhm.
and they'll go to University Avenue and go over. But where you're gonna have that skewed from 4 lanes to 2, there might need to be another process, like maybe they turn back and get on the center street, go on the freeway,
Yeah,
and get
that's
off
great.
Lakeview Parkway. I mean, just some kind of thought on how to prep whatever bus driver is going to be handling that mess for the next little bit. I think it would also affect your, not Provo High anymore, not Sharon Lane anymore. But you know, you might have some of those that I'm not aware of that don't go to my house. And you also might have to look at that.
Have to find out from Troy how often
Yeah,
that
because
happens.
university's not gonna be available anymore to cross.
Well, if you have a brand new driver, it happens often. If you don't have a brand new driver that's more seasoned, that realizes that you don't do that, it doesn't happen at all.
I will say, because I have to cross there to take my daughter, I have to cross the tracks. Sometimes I will look down there and there is no train, but by the time I get to the tracks, there is a train. And I'm driving a smaller vehicle that I can turn around, but you can't turn around a bus. So I think that there are some things that we can do to help mitigate that and make sure that the training's in place, but I don't think there's anything we can do to completely get rid of that issue.
Well, like I said, if you have a new driver, I've noticed, it happens frequently.
And that's why we try
If
to be
you
so kind to our new employees.
If you have a seasoned driver, I never ever see it.
So seasoned drivers and seasoned teachers are important.
Yes.
Love it.
And if we can season our younger ones with the seasoning of the older ones, that's great. So that is something that we can pass along to our transportation director to be aware of that. I can't promise you though that it's going to go away. I think trains are going to be the trains, and we live in a city with trains. So, but we can definitely bring that up.
Yeah.
There's transportation to look at.
So that'll come up, I think it's on the May 13th board meeting is when we're going to be approving, the board will be approving those recommendations.
Okay. Anything else on the Franklin Safe Routes to School?
Do you feel like that you have been able to get enough information from Vern and from UDOT in order to make those routes as safe and effective as you need?
I believe so. I mean, Jared would be the one to ask, but the meetings I've been in with him, he seems to be very grateful.
It's been working quite well, I feel like,
Okay.
so thank you.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, so thank you
glad.
very much.
Okay. Let's move on to item number 6, which is a discussion regarding annexation updates, which is the one that I jumped the gun on previously. So, do we have, well, we might have something to take a look at, but before we get there, a map. We wanted to kind of show you some of the annexation stuff, but
She does have a map.
no map?
We do.
Oh, we do. Okay, perfect. So, as I said previously, I'll just go back. We appreciate the help from the city employees to get those plot maps, because that was super helpful because we don't have those tools. We did annex the property from Alpine, and the next step for that, the last step, like I said previously, is to get that last survey map to turn to the county, which will go to the lieutenant governor and hopefully be done for this coming tax year. We do have some parcels that are that we need to do with NEBO. There are few parcels, but there are some parcels that need to be done with NEBO. So we will start working on those. It is a little more intensive than I think we originally anticipated.
Yeah.
So we will continue to work on those with the NEBO.
Devin's become an expert on
Yes.
maps of all sorts of things, but wowza.
Did you have something?
Well, I think we should just go back and clarify, I think, what Rachel was getting at. I do, and maybe Steve, you can help clarify. I think we were talking about two separate things, what Lisa was saying and what you were saying. So I think generally, when you're like, my property taxes went up, and that automatically means the school district or whomever received a windfall of money, and that's not the case, right? That means someone else's went down if we have not increased the tax rate. But I do think you're right. If it's new development, we do get a little bit of growth. Is that what you were speaking to?
Yes.
So I do think
so
on
this
these we will get
additional
growth.
areas, we are getting more money as a result
Right.
of those areas being
Yeah,
added.
so so if you were getting $100 before and you add $10 in new area, now your baseline is 110.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
So, does that sound right?
Yeah, so when there is new growth, there's one-time money you get when that comes on the rolls.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then next year, it's always based on how much money you got last year.
Okay, gotcha.
Got it. So that's when it kind of evens
Yeah,
out
so
to that.
then the rate floats down because you've added new property.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
So even if you if we doubled the size of Provo through annexation in 1 year, the next year we'd get the exact same tax revenue?
Yeah. So the certified tax rate keeps windfalls from happening is kind of the purpose of it. To avoid problems like what you had in California years ago that led to the voter initiative that changed the way they did property taxes. It was what led to that, all the anger, is because every time a new property would come on, they just got more and more money ongoing, and so there was huge windfalls that were happening. And so Utah put in place this to prevent that type of thing from happening.
Steve,
Yeah.
on this map though, the two little orange dots in the middle though, those are county, is that correct?
So that was the thing that I think, are you talking about?
Those
The
are
islands.
the islands?
two little islands right here.
And that is what Jennifer wanted me to make sure
Is it
to bring
different?
up, is to ask if the city can start to annex those properties, because you cannot.
The property owner has to ask to be annexed into the city.
Okay,
We
I think
can
I remember that
then
now.
start to do that.
Oh, okay.
So if they want to, then we can do that process. But this is a matter of private property rights.
It happened a couple of times along Canyon Road there in the North District.
Yeah,
And on University.
On University.
An island as well.
yeah.
There is a way, I believe, to override the property owner in certain situations. We can look at
Yeah.
that. Vern? I'm not trying to call on you.
Vern.
Vern has a.
We have seen a project plan approval for a subdivision for that island that's been there for many years. So there is hope that they're going to annex that entire piece into Provo City very soon. To the point where we move forward, Provo City has, and we're putting sidewalks on that frontage right there that will greatly benefit, what's the North School up there?
Canyon Crest?
Canyon Crest.
Edgemont?
Elementary school.
Canyon Crest Elementary?
Crest.
Yeah.
And also to the south, we're doing sidewalks that will benefit Edgemont. So,
Okay, perfect.
we're hopeful that that will come into the city fairly soon.
Awesome. And then another thing that both Devin and Jennifer talked about is if that process does start to happen, if someone would just let us know, like when it's getting toward the end, because we have a 60-day window where the process is way easier. So if someone would, I don't know, who would that be that might let us know that that process is starting to come to an end so that we can get on top of our piece and get that property annexed, because that would be money that we could use.
Are you involved in that?
I'll certainly make sure that Development Services realizes that.
Okay,
that'd be great.
Thank you.
Because otherwise the process takes years.
Yeah, just like it has.
Yes.
This last time, yeah.
And I tried to let Derek Marshall know when the city council has voted on something like that,
Okay.
which should be helpful to you.
Okay, thank you, yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully, thank you. Okay, annexation, let me make sure that I got,
Oh,
hey.
can you go back to the little map? That
Sure.
was kind of fun to see. Sorry. It was such a nice
There was a
map.
tiny little piece
There
on
were two
Carterville
different kinds
Road
of
that we
islands.
had to give back to Alpine,
Yes.
but it was very small.
Okay, and so where we're right now, changing the border with Springville, You guys are aware of that?
I was not.
Okay. Once again,
I haven't read that, but I
we
think
are
that is-
changing the border down there on the south. We had attempted to do this before, but there are lots of procedural hoops here and at the county level and things like that, and we're trying to get the process right this time. So, I think, where are we in that, Justin? We
I
just
mean,
had
look,
another
we just,
vote.
yeah, we just approved it, so it should be, the plot map should be approved, and then it has to go to the Lieutenant Governor's office. So I can follow up with Development Services, but it's my understanding that if there are annexations or
Boundary line
adjustments, that there's a requirement to notice other taxing entities. So we can check and see who they have been sending that to at the school district.
Who's getting the
Yeah.
notice?
Can you show us on this map, like, where you're looking
Where-
at annexing, possibly?
Where the adjustment is? It's just it's a tiny little
It's
thing
like
where it's negligible. But it's the only border change that we're doing right now. Like, we recently did the one up in Orem, that was the little kind of trade thing. Is there any issue with us having, because we've got within our city some of these Alpine ones still, right? Are those the ones that you've been working to change?
We've changed everything's been changed we're just waiting for that to get certified and then sent to the state. But
Okay.
then everything should align between Alpine and Provo, so.
Okay, good. And then also with Provo and Nebo down at the bottom?
We have not started that process yet.
Okay.
I think we're waiting to finish this one.
Yep.
And then we
And then
on
we'll
to
do that one, okay.
But it is on our radar.
So then that little tiny adjustment that we're doing right now can be incorporated into that process?
It's possible.
Unless you have that 60-day window, which you may want to look at now.
Yeah.
Yes, which is true. That
We
60-day
won't
window.
back and forth.
Find out. So
Okay.
if I was at Justin that said maybe you can check and make sure that we're getting the notices. I don't know what happened previously, but it would be great to just
Yeah.
double check on that so that we don't have to jump.
I sent a text and I'll see if I can get you an answer.
Thank you, Mayor.
But we're giving that away, right? We're not adopting that into Provo, so.
Oh, we're giving away land to Springville? Oh,
The border, yeah.
It's this little sliver down. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else before Bonnie puts the map away?
We've almost got it all cleaned up, guys.
It's getting there. It's getting
Yeah,
there.
because we'd asked you about this a few years ago, and so I'm glad to see.
And we've been working on it for those few years, I promise.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
takes forever.
Well, and there were certain impediments that were in
Yes,
place
correct,
that are no longer
correct.
there now.
Kind of. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move on to item number 7, a discussion regarding school updates for Wasatch and Timpview. These should be fun. Let's start with Timpview. So,
You don't want to start with
I should have.
No, we don't want to start with Wasatch, that'll take so long.
So Timpview, I should have done my homework more on this. I did my homework more on the budget discussion. But with Timpview, what we're working on now is we've approved for them to get started on the cafeteria, right? So we rebuilt the academic wing, and now we need to do the cafeteria. And so it will be beautiful. The plans, I've been sitting in on those. It will be so big and beautiful and open. It will be a big open space. So they will begin that. They have begun. We gave them. They've already begun that process. And so they're going to redo that area, and then the next phase after that, which I think is 2A?
It's 2B. The cafeteria is
We
2A.
had lots of phases and we had to
2B.
figure them out. So phase 2B will be that they will have a new auditorium, and new CTE and arts,
performing arts, fine arts, special ed, administration, counseling.
So we just went through the process of having all those teachers come in and give feedback. They didn't get everything they wanted. Neither do I, so I think we're okay. But we tried to really listen to the teachers to make sure that the setups made sense.
Right.
And so we just went through that process, and now the architects are putting that together, all the last feedback, and then they'll present it to the board, and then we'll finalize those plans so that we're ready to go when phase 2B, which it's all still happening right
So
now.
the developmental design, I think they said, should be done in August, and then they'll start taking it out to bid, and then they'll have everything finalized with all final bids by November of this year. And the lease revenue bond that we recently had for the 70 million, we probably won't start drawing on that, so it won't affect people's property taxes this year. It'll be the following year.
So just to piggyback on that, because we won't be starting until probably November of 2025 this year, right? We're going to have parking issues again, because we were going to be starting building in that new parking lot, which is north of the tennis courts. So we're going to need help from the city again with parking issues.
They'll actually probably start at the beginning of school, because that parking lot will probably be gone at that point.
Just to be aware that that's something that we could have help with the city for parking.
And you guys are working with Sandy with that?
With what?
You guys are working with Sandy?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
At the police department, there's a lot of people
Oh,
at the
there's
table
more
on
than
this
just
one.
Sandy?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they've been, we've been working on this since construction began with parking issues with Moe, and so we'll gear up again, and we'll get there, and we'll have police there. I got a call this morning about an issue with parking and driving. It's
At Timview?
Yeah.
Well, please let us know if there's anything that we need to do on our end to help support.
It's just tricky, right, because it's under construction, so it's just going to be ugly for a little while. So everyone just obey the law, and let's just get through it. The light's at the end of the tunnel, and we'll get there.
That's all with the mayor's office and Sandy and police.
Oh, got it. Okay. So any questions on Timview? Wasatch. We had, second verse, same as the first, we had a long discussion about this at our Tuesday board meeting, just this past Tuesday. We had in contractor, architect, geotechnical, people who did the geotechnical reports.
And wall design.
And the wall design and construction. So to back up a little bit, with the weather that has happened, the wall started to, what is a good way to
So it bowed
describe it?
out, so the bottom wall bowed out because of water that was building up behind it, and it caused the upper parking lot to settle. So, so you had kind of two situations that were happening there. So they stripped that back. They found that there's water that's storing up behind the wall. It's not really underground. It's not groundwater. It's coming from somewhere. They still have not identified the source of the water as of yet, which is concerning. And so we've asked them to hold. We have a couple of third parties that are going to go in and evaluate, because they're just trying to they believe it's unforeseen circumstances, just based on our knowledge of the history of the lot. I don't know, so we need to really vet that through and look at that very carefully. So we're getting some independent investigations. The amount to fix it ranges depending on what option we use, from $623,000 to $1.3 million that they want the district to pay to fix that. So, but we still haven't found the source of the water, so that's concerning with the wall. So it's going to be unbuttoned for a little while. So.
And that is also making sure we put it back together correctly.
Yes, we will.
Right. And
we don't want to
absolutely
do it haphazardly and then we haven't identified the source in it. We just have to peel it back again. So they've already put in additional drains, but as somebody said, there's still water there. So somehow, even with the additional drains that have been put in, it's not alleviating all of the issues. So we have to do some more investigating before we button that up. So it's a good time.
Yeah. We've learned more about construction and walls.
I have learned a lot about retaining walls.
Well, the drainage in the wall, and then what
How
happens
you
to the
build a
wall as
wall
result
with
to-
drainage.
Yeah. So we've learned lots, and then nothing at all at the same time. So.
Well, just more questions come as you
Yeah,
learn
more
more. There's
questions
more
come,
questions,
that's
right?
exactly
I think
right.
that's as we kind of understand the context better. Maybe I can ask the city question. I don't know. I don't think anyone may have the answer. I've been curious and have some neighbors asking questions about other developments around that site and things that may have happened, or just necessary changes, how that maybe is affecting new water to our site. I don't know how we can look into that, or
like new development, new houses.
Yeah, and like, 'cause I know there's different springs. Like I think early on there was a spring on the Wasatch site that needed to be capped, and maybe there was another recent spring in the last year and a half that was capped. And not that I think that's still just going to be water that we need to make sure we're mitigating for, but curious just would like to know, like, did all of that go correctly as well? I don't know. And I don't think it was the city who did that. I just am curious about what the city may know about that, or how we could
Legally, you're
understand that.
supposed to retain all your water on your property, right?
Okay.
So I really like our engineering department, and I would dare say that they're making sure that the city laws of keeping
Perfect,
that
yes.
on your property is actually happening.
Yeah, okay.
So what's going on with underground water or streams of water underneath the surface, I don't know. But if you can't find the source of the water, you're obviously getting something that's not surface level.
Well, no, because this isn't groundwater. This isn't water that's coming
It's
up.
not coming up.
It's streaming from somewhere.
Streaming from
Yeah.
somewhere, from a
It's
higher
not
elevation down.
Yeah, but it's runoff, but it's not surface runoff.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
like
So
from
in that
scratch.
way, it's
kind of.
It's kind of not
Hydrated.
groundwater, it's not
pouring into
surface,
the
yes,
groundwater
that's right.
system.
Yeah.
But because of that, it's invisible, and you don't know
Yes.
which paths it's taking through the different
correct.
rocks and faults and cracks and everything
Yes.
like that.
And you guys are at, if I'm understanding this correctly, the mountain's here, and this is your southwest corner,
That's
right?
correct.
So it's coming somewhere, most likely it's coming downhill, so most likely it's either coming from your property down, or maybe from the mountain in
I
there
love all of
down.
those theories, but even our engineering firms don't know. So
Yeah.
we're still waiting on those experts to figure that out.
I don't
so.
think it's going uphill.
No. That was
I think
never
it's
that was
coming-
never
yeah,
the that was never the suggestion.
I
that
think
it was
it's
coming
coming
uphill.
somewhere this way.
Money is the only thing that makes water flow uphill.
That is true. And we definitely don't have that, so that's not happening.
And I'm not an engineer, but I'm just gonna say that.
No, we understand.
Yeah, sorry,
that
my
piece of
question
it.
was not, I'm just kind of curious about, even just to know that that may be the source, not that there's anything
Yeah.
wrong.
Or if just
like,
capping something, does that change the flow
Yeah,
somehow
and-
that we're not aware of?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that would be on the developer at that point. Once I'm just curious.
So are you asking if there's someone, is there someone
Yeah.
specifically you can contact to ask
Yeah,
those questions?
and maybe it is just the developer. I don't know. I'm really
I
naive.
would
I'm
start
just-
with Gordon, because
Yeah.
he's over Public Works.
Okay.
And he used to be the city engineer.
Right. Yeah, I know Gordon.
And I throw it to Vern, but he's an engineer, but he's doing traffic.
I
right
know.
now.
Vern's helping us
Traffic
on
and
that.
safety only.
Let's make it water can be an occult science.
Well, and then Gordon can farm it out to whoever.
Well, yeah, just to give maybe some direction might be.
I'd have a conversation with Gordon.
And I had assumed coming into this that someone on the ground level had probably reached out to Provo City by this point, but if not, yeah, that's certainly.
Yeah. They went through.
Yeah,
they did, and they went through. There wasn't anything that was problematic with storm drains
So
or anything
someone
like
from
that.
Provo
So
City
yes,
has been there,
yes,
yeah.
for those help.
They've actually
yeah.
gone into the
Yeah.
storm
Yeah, they
drains,
did.
they've looked down, they've
Yeah.
taken
Great.
yeah,
They've helped us with that.
cameras, they've done
Yeah.
those things, and they haven't found any signs of water, so that's
So we don't have a
good,
leak in
but
our
we still don't
system.
know.
No, that's what they
Right,
were
they
checking
did all
for.
the
There was
pressure
no leak
checks.
there.
Yeah.
No.
We've sent out a few different communications to the Wasatch community so that they understand what's happening, because it can be quite alarming to drive by and see that the wall is coming down.
Yes.
And so Meg has also been doing, so our communications team along with our district leadership has been doing a good job of that, as well as Meg, who this is her in her specific
Just mostly
district.
reaching out to kind of the stakeholder points, community council, pods, district chair, and available if anyone has questions, they can email me too. I can direct them where they need to go.
But I'm confident everyone on our team is happy to sit down at the table and talk through whatever
Right.
people want to talk
Yeah.
through. Even
And
if
we
there's other
haven't-
elements besides those ones we've already kind of ruled out, I'm sure
Yeah.
we can bring whatever
Yeah.
expertise to the table to talk.
And we haven't had any issue with
Maybe.
the city. We haven't.
Mhm.
I think Meg was just wondering.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was more
That's
like,
a different
yeah.
discussion
Since
topic.
we're all
It's one
here.
that never crossed my mind. It's an interesting, yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, then, well, it's just so interesting because it likely is a seasonal thing, right? When were the geotechnical studies done for the property?
2020 and 2022.
August and
Wait,
April.
August and April. So April's probably should have caught something like this if that were.
But the
actual-
borings for the April one were done right where the school site is.
Yeah.
So they're not
Okay.
more further down where the.
Further south.
where-
I
yeah.
see. Yeah.
But what I'm starting to kind of gather though, I think even those snapshots, I think, and this is what even the contractor's saying, the land was always, while they were working on this, it was a dry site, regularly dry. This seems to be not the same kind of groundwater that when they put those borings in, they're going to see. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's almost like water you need to anticipate at some point may come onto the property.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's water that's passing
Yeah,
through
so
it.
I just don't, and that was not, so I think, yeah, we were trying to kind of parse out the geotechnical study, but then also why that said there was no groundwater when it was done. But this just might be a different thing that we're looking
Yeah.
for. I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
There was also a drought in 2022.
Right, so you wouldn't have had as much runoff.
A lot of different factors, and we're becoming, like I said, we're becoming experts on
Water.
things outside of our personal knowledge that
We have all
professional
learned, right?
knowledge.
Mother Nature's
That's
the boss.
Right. That's right.
Right.
That's true.
That
Very
is
true.
So as we're working to figure out, so first we need to find where the source of the water is so that we know whatever solution you put in place will adequately address it and won't have to be redone.
Yeah.
The next thing is to figure out if this actually was an unforeseeable thing and if we're on the hook for it.
Yeah. Those are kind of happening at the same time.
Right.
They're both happening, but yes.
Right.
Because I think from our vantage point, right, this is a month and a half into the school opening that this wall is compromised, right?
Yeah.
That seems really quick,
Yes.
right? And so that's kind of, yeah, part of what we're.
Are they seeing a leak from like, I don't know, the lunchroom or something?
No,
No
they
leaks
haven't
anywhere.
seen anything.
No leaks at all from the school?
No.
So,
Is this the sort of thing where it's likely that the school district will need to pay to do the mediation or whatever has to be done and the rebuilding, and then see if it's possible to recoup those costs later on?
Potentially.
Yep. So will that affect your budget this year?
Steve? Yes, yeah, I mean, it would. I mean, it's probably gonna be an additional $1 million, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that additional $1 million is not accounted for in the presentation that
No,
we saw
correct.
earlier?
That presentation was put together
Before the
before
Before Tuesday, yeah.
our meeting last Tuesday.
We just got the numbers for the fix just on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could be potentially up to $1.3 million.
Good night. You gotta tell the kids not to march around the wall blowing their horns.
they wanted the walls to come down, huh?
Anything else on either Timpview or Wasatch? Did we cover those adequately?
There aren't any concerns about continuing to operate in the school while the wall is partially down.
We asked that extensively, and currently we are being reassured that there is no, because the school is on, for what they were saying, correct me, but this is a group project, the school is on native soil, right? The wall is not necessarily made of native soil. The school is pretty much on.
Yeah, I think that's
So
why they put it where it is.
It's a 100-foot drop, and so to understand this, they took about 50 feet from the top end to raise up the south end to
Right.
make it all level. And so but the south end, which is where we brought in the soil, is where we're finding the collapsing.
But we did use soil from the north
But
end.
it's the same soil, and they said it's very good soil.
It is good soil, but the school is on native soil,
Yes.
so.
So that
wasn't-
where the school was built, it was not disturbed, wasn't.
But
So-
if you don't address the problem soon, is that going to start chipping away so it goes further and further?
This is why we want to find the
That's
source.
sure, we
I
gotta
mean,
find
yeah.
the source of the
Possibly.
water.
Well, especially if water's still moving through it and moving your soil.
Right.
Yeah.
But as of right now, they've said, no, that is, we are, the school, the building is safe.
Okay.
And they have
Keep the
checked, they have
conversation,
checked to make sure, as much as they can with the building already there, right? They've kind of
Yeah.
looked to see where they can, if the water is affecting the floor. And so far, the answer is no.
All right.
And we have other people, third parties, coming in and looking at different things, so.
We putting little tags on it to see if there's any shifting or movement?
I'm not sure how they're doing that. I haven't gotten that far in my
Marbles.
education.
Marbles. Yeah. Well, and we just had an earthquake last night too.
I heard about that. I was asleep, but Lisa, who left, was awake, so.
Yeah. Okay, wow, well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
That is, not fun.
Mhm.
It's like the worst
Yeah,
news.
we're doing the best we can, and I feel like we're working well together as a board and as a district, and then we just have to figure out how we're gonna mitigate, find out the problem, like I said, mitigate it, and then work with the entities who brought the whole thing together.
Kids excited to see the construction equipment there again?
I'm not sure.
I'll ask Ruth Ann, I'm not sure.
Okay, the last one, item number 8, just other updates. Is there anything else that we missed or that we need to go over in the last few minutes here?
I have a quick question. This is going to be obnoxious, but okay, I got this cute little postcard in the mail to the parent garden of my T-Birds student. I only have one child at Timpview. I've only ever had one child at Timpview. My other kids went to Provo. But I got 4 of these.
Oh gosh.
Can I see?
So,
wow, that's awesome.
I'm wondering why.
There's no name, it's just the address.
They like you a lot.
Yeah,
Mail.
maybe check the mail system and see if addresses are consolidated.
Can I take those and show Mommy what happened?
Yeah. Want one?
No, I don't think I need it.
You got Isaac's letter, you got...
Yeah, it's not like I ever had 4 kids at the school, and so I was just like, this is weird.
No, but that would be good information for Mommy to be aware.
So Mommy's the one to get that.
Yeah.
Have you received our from the district, not from the school, our what do you call it? Newsletters that we send out? We send one out in the summer or in May or something.
I get a single copy.
You get a single copy. I was just curious if you got 4 copies or 1.
I don't recall getting 4 copies of anything before.
Okay.
I think this is the first time that this has happened.
That's super fun.
They
They just really like you, Rachel.
I
Yeah.
know.
They're really grateful. It says thank you, but they want to thank you 4 times.
So many times. Yes. No, I don't think that this has happened yet.
Okay.
So this way, if there's a new system or something, the glitch, you can catch it
Great,
quickly.
thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And even if we don't have a meeting, if something like that happens, contact Jennifer. She's not here.
Well, I think I got them last week, and knowing that the meeting was coming up, I tucked it in my bag so that I could.
Thank you. No, thank you. It's good information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we've got graduation coming up and everything.
We do. We have, I just emailed the board about it. We have Timpview graduation on, someone help me.
19th.
The 19th.
The
14th is the first one.
I am very hopeful that my child will be graduating.
Yes, my family has had those before as
Senioritis a bit.
Oh my gosh.
So we have, Timpview High School is May 19th, UVU 6 p.m. Provo High is May 21st, 6 p.m. at UVU. Independence High School is May 20th, 7 p.m. at the school at IHS. Adult Education is May 14th at 7 p.m. at IHS. And then fall graduation, which is for the students who needed just a little extra time, will be October 1st tentatively.
I hope that's not me.
Maybe we'll see you there. Shout out to Rachel.
To my family.
Yes, so we have graduations coming. This is what we call Maycember, because there's lots of things happening, just like in December. So we hope that everybody's aware of what's happening, and also you guys are always invited to come and participate. I don't know that of anyone who really wants to come and sit through graduations unless you have a student there, but you can come sit by me on the stand if you want.
Yeah, the last graduation that we went to was the drive-through graduation in 2020.
Okay. I heard that was fantastic.
Where will they be held, at UVU?
So UVU, the 2 traditional high schools will be at UVU, and the rest so far are scheduled, we have Independence will be at Independence High School, which is on, it's just off of...
It's just off of
Independence
Avenue.
Yeah.
Independence Avenue.
It's right by the train tracks. So,
Yeah.
if you want, I can send you that information. Would you like me to send you any of that? Okay.
Yeah. All right.
You want to come sit on the stand with us?
Yeah, we could get robes for you to wear too.
There we go. We do
Heck
like
yeah.
those.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Board, anything else? City Council? Thanks again for making the time. I really do think the 2-hour meetings are working. It's only an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
nice
And no one's going to be mad for
But
leaving
we weren't
early, right?
rushed.
What? No, I don't.
Which
Hopefully, I was trying to keep it on track, but not rush it. But I appreciate the opportunity that we have to work together for the good of the people in the city. So I appreciate everybody coming to the table and bringing in information. So thank you very much. Appreciate the extra communication that board and council leadership are having recently. And we're always welcome. We're always open for feedback and things like that anytime of the year. So having reached the end of our agenda, the meeting is adjourned.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Until next time. Okay.
Tuesday. It was a train wreck, because we were tabling motions, and we had all these people here. And I also, I don't want to start.
If you get that benchmark.
I'm upset.
Somebody do too, that would be great.
Actually, I didn't, I'll make sure.
They talked about it for, I don't know,
I got time.
Okay.